And now I'm going to introduce you. So we are so glad that Meredith is here. She is friend of the museum. She is maven of the Ways Goose registration. So if you've ever attended a Hamilton Ways Goose in November, Meredith is probably the one who has checked you in. She's been doing it
the
for
last
years.
5 years. It might have been Ron.
She's had a partner in crime for a while now, which has been really good as well. So yeah, we've got the team of Meredith and Ron Dimon today, and you're at Greenware Press Studio, correct? Which
Correct.
is so exciting.
Greenware Press Studios. I put it at the top of the chat so that you guys know where to find me.
Wonderful. And you're going to be offering 2-week residencies for visual artists, musicians, and writers once construction gets done, correct?
Yes.
Wonderful.
I don't think anybody wants to be here while construction is underway.
No.
So as you'll see later, we have 15 electricians on property right now. They are cooking up enough juice to make sure the kiln never, shorts and all of that stuff. But in the process, because of how things are in Santa Fe, we found out that the transformer is not on our property, and they took out the entire neighborhood's internet finding that out. So there's a lot of adventure to this process. It is, for those of you who know me from transit, you already know that I used to run transit, which was an artist residency based out of Chicago. That really was created with the intention of wanting to help Hamilton. I was already volunteering there, and at that time, Steph, I don't even think you had been full-time yet. Like, you were coming on board, but you weren't there. And so we created a nonprofit artist residency based in Chicago that partnered with nonprofits that didn't have the staff or funding to offer residencies, but wanted to bring artists to their locations, right? So Hamilton was a great example. As a working museum, they need people who know what they're doing to work on the presses and the wood type to keep the wood type healthy, but they need to know that you're not going to do harm to their equipment and their archives as well. And so in that context, what we did is we worked with Hamilton to create criteria, and then would come up with a group of anonymous jurors from the Hamilton community who would help us jury in an artist to spend 2 weeks at Hamilton. And I loved doing that. We also partnered with other nonprofits. One was based in Chicago, and about the time that I moved to Santa Fe, which was May of 2018, they also folded. It was an organization called the Chicago Independent, anyway, sorry, I'll write it down later. But the organization that we worked with was for zine and self-publishing artists. And so the artists that would come would get 2 weeks in Chicago and then present at Chicago Alternative Comics Expo each summer. And so when I moved here, my understanding was that I was going to simply relocate transit, and it would now be based in Santa Fe. But nonprofit law in New Mexico and in Illinois required that I would completely dissolve transit and then start from scratch. Even though we had a federal ID number, it would not be of any use to me. And frankly, creating the nonprofit was one of the most complicated parts of starting transit. So I decided that since our intention in moving to Santa Fe was for me to return to a full-time studio practice, that we are not creating a nonprofit, but this residency will still offer 2-week opportunities for artists and writers and musicians, but it will not be a nonprofit. So we're still figuring out how to make it a kind of a career development arm of my studio practice. And in that context, I'm going to start showing you the studios, if that's okay. Are you guys ready for that? All right, cool. Here we go. Thank you. Okay, so connecting. And is this on which Wi-Fi? House, okay. Okay, so I'm going to flip this. No, I'm not. Sorry, guys. Bear with me one sec. Nice shirt, Ron.
I stole it.
Is there okay, I don't know. All right, bear with me, guys. So this is the print shop that I'm working from. That's the computer I was just talking to you. Please let me know if I'm going too fast or too slow. So far, there's one type cabinet, furniture, can for rags, another type cabinet, and then my pride and joy. This is a 219 AB, and there's an artist here who teaches letterpress at the community college, and his name is James Borland. And he's also the proprietor of 12 Tons of Press. And he's been helping me work on my press, and also was Ron's letterpress teacher this year. Okay, so we are now out of the print shop. This is what we call our courtyard. That's my garage up there. First, I'm going to take you to the future ceramic studio. Okay. So the clay studio is it's a little over 500 square feet. It's still under construction. This weekend, we are getting bricks in. Here, follow me. There will be a potter's wheel, a bunch of work tables, and an electric kiln that can go up to cone 8 for those of you who know anything about clay. Right now, it's pretty much just messy construction zone, but it is exciting. It smells like wood, and they are currently installing the electrical on the far side. This property is 1.25 acres, and the house was built in 1983, and it's smaller than our house in Chicago was, but all on one level, which we love. And there are grapevines and apple trees and a peach tree. Our property it's amazing what it came with. An apricot tree. So I'm gonna change over the Wi-Fi right now. So if I lose you, I'll be right back. No, this way.
I have to admit, I want to see Ron. We haven't met Ron officially.
I know, right? I agree. He's been hiding.
And also, is Hamilton around?
Hamilton is not around. It's his birthday, so he's at home. If he saw all the electricians that were here, he would get very nervous. I forgot to unlock this door.
All right, I will get the keys.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Hamilton, I'm so sorry. Hamilton is my dog, and today he turns 9, and he was named after the museum, of course, but he's usually called Hammy Ham.
And he's a cutie.
He is an overprotective pit bull. Now, are you guys seeing the camera still?
No.
Okay, let me try to get that back. I need the camera on here, sorry. Sorry, I'm borrowing my husband's phone and it's different than mine, so I'm a little lost. Awesome. Okay. And
see you again.
See if excellent. And then see if I can flip it. There we go. All right, so this is the front door of the casita, right? And to its right, I'm trying to go slow enough so I don't make anyone seasick. These doors are to its attached studio. It has its own private studio, right? And if you're at the front door, you can see all the crap that they have been working on, right? All the pipes. This is for our transformer and for upping all of our electrical. So if you look that way, you can see how beautiful the view is here. You can see Mount Baldy in the distance. And below it, you can see our transformer and all the stuff they're working on. right? There you go. So that's exciting. Okay, now we'll go inside where it's a little bit more pleasant. There's Ron.
Hi, Hamilton.
That's my husband.
Hi,
Hello.
Ron.
Anytime, Brad. So this is what's called a banco here. It's basically a built-in couch. And we'll be replacing these cushions. But this is the living room. It's ridiculously large. It has its own little fireplace. Eventually a piano will go over there. It has a little kitchen and the dining area. That'll be where the table goes. Please, anybody tell me if I'm going too fast. Our little kitchen, we have dreams of fixing this part up, but it's functional already. And then the studio, it has its own washer and dryer. A couple of steps down. And then this big space. Not too shabby. So in here, there will be a large easel. There will be work tables for people as they need them. I'm looking into getting a show card press that could come in here if the person didn't want to use the other print shop. This weird little area houses plants eventually and will be turned into a mini office. This was actually originally the sunroom for the entry when it was owned by other people, but we're not using that door as the front door anymore. So that's this space. And maybe I'll go out that way and then I can show you guys more. Anybody have any questions I could answer? I'm gonna take that as a no.
When are you taking reservations?
Hopefully soon. We want all the construction to be done. Those are a couple of the apple trees. We trimmed them back because they were all done as a espalier. I am hoping that we will be in here full time by June. I don't know if that's correct. I think you can close up. Yeah, thanks. To house Wi-Fi. Sorry, I got to switch my Wi-Fi again, gang. Bear with me. Settings and.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have a whole crew when you open. We're all gonna come at once and party.
I can't wait. I would love that. That's the point. I look forward to seeing you guys here. So it is just beautiful here. You know, the thing about Santa Fe is that everything's slower. This is the smallest town I've ever lived in. There are almost 100,000 residents, and it is spectacularly beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna turn this part off or give it back to my husband so that he can turn this part off, and then I will meet you guys in the print shop. I'll be right there. Thank you. All right. Oh, he's still doing fancy stuff. Okay. Hello, everybody. I am back. So our goal is to be moving in June. The pandemic has slowed everything down, and some people have ceased working entirely, and it's a little hit or miss. Things operate differently in Santa Fe, obviously, than they do in Chicago. You don't have 50,000 options for who you work with on things. So there was a single electrician that we could work with. And even when they messed up, we continue to have to work with them. So some of those things we're getting used to. Some of those things I'm not getting used to, but I'm learning to. We have roof work that has to be done before we can relocate. And once that's done, then we can begin moving things in. As of last week, local movers are ambivalent about moving, but it is considered an essential service. So, you know, we don't want to put ourselves at risk or anybody else at risk. So we are trying to be realistic that things might get delayed a little further. But the goal is that the day after the roofing happens, we move in. So this has taken far longer than we thought it would. And we're really anxious to be here full time. Once that occurs, it will only be a couple of months before we can start inviting calls for entries. And we're really excited about that. Some of it will be, bits and bobs. For example, our hope is to eventually have sound panels that can be hung into that studio space so musicians who want to record can acoustically use that space how they need to. We've got little things like that studio, for example, on this call, Ben Blunt and his lovely wife, Melissa, who's also an artist, and they have a daughter, for example. And so if they were going to come do a residency, they'd likely want to bring her with them. And we encourage that. This is a family-friendly residency. I know enough parental artists who have struggled finding residencies if they can't bring their family with them, and that's not a problem for us. But in that context, then what we would likely do is convert that private studio into a temporary bedroom for during those 2 weeks. And then they'd use my studios with me. So we're trying to find ways that can really facilitate the ability for artists who usually cannot spend that generosity of time that most residencies require. 2 weeks, most people can get off of work and it's realistic. And part of why I founded Transit was because I was so aware of the need for working artists to have those residency opportunities. And too often, it's kind of an impossibility for people who have a job and a family. And we wanted to figure out how to change that. The other thing is Santa Fe is the third biggest art market in America. Other than LA and New York, the most artwork is sold out of here. There are annual events, none of which are happening in 2020, but the 99th Indian market is going to occur and has amazing native tribal arts from all over the world. It's not just the United States and Canada and stuff in Central America. It's from overseas. We had amazing Maori artists. I mean, it's a very powerful event to go to, and it's supported by the Southwest, I think it's called the Southwest Alliance of Indian Arts, but I'm not totally sure. It's SWAIA is what they call it. There's also the Spanish market, both a contemporary version and a historic version. The historic one, there's lots of wood carvings, like church carvings, and lots of wood type, lots of sculpture, pottery, and weaving. There's a balloon festival every year here in Albuquerque. I mean, there's just a lot going on in general here. There's a world famous folk arts market that over 290 countries were represented by last year. It's pretty phenomenal. And so our goal is to create a calendar that kind of specifies when those kinds of events are happening, and then really try to target the residencies to be site specific in that. Why is it that you want to come to Santa Fe? Why is that a significant part? There's an amazing history of printing here, which I am still educating myself on. The major place in town is at the Palace of Governors, and it's a historic print shop that was kind of put together by a number of different printers' collections. So forgive me, I took notes because I don't have all of it memorized. But it is run by Tom Leach, who is a paper marbler as well as an artist of other things. He and his assistant director, James Borland, oversee all of the collection. They teach workshops, they give tours, they print limited edition books. James is a friend because he's helping me work on my press, and he was also the person who was Ron's teacher when he took a letterpress class at the community college. But there's also a very large, the Santa Fe Book Arts group is, I think, between 250, 300 members strong. It's huge. And so every 2 years, they have a large exhibition in our governmental buildings around house. And that just happened this year. Katya Reika, who's one of the artists that's been involved with Hamilton, was in that exhibition. She lives in the area. I don't know if those of you that know me from Chicago, there are a couple of other people who had gone to Columbia College Chicago's Book and Paper grad program, one a year before me and one a year after me, that both live in the area as well. So there's some really exciting stuff. You know, there's definitely lots of cowboy art, if you like that, and loads of sunsets. But there's amazing, yes, Rory mentioned Kyle. Santa Fe, Kyle is awesome and one of my very favorite people here. She's at Power and Light Press in Silver City, and she was one of the hosts of the Southwest Print Fiesta. Ron and I went for the first time in October, and it was incredible. It was maybe only 35 or 40 vendors, but they were from Texas, like Western Texas, Arizona, parts of Southern California, New Mexico, all over. And it's just a really collaborative, friendly group of printers. I mean, I can't say I've met too many printers who aren't friendly, frankly, but everyone is very warm. So yes, Kyle is in town quite often because her dad lives in Santa Fe. And she had an employee, Natalie, who runs Etc. Letterpress. And just this past weekend, Natalie is moving up to Santa Fe. So she'll be around soon. We have James, who runs a press. We have Tenderhearted Press, which is run by Oscar Maynard, and they are very influenced by Amos Kennedy's work. I really like their work a lot. Who else? There's Aaron Mickelson from Broken Cloud Press. There are many more printers, but I am still educating myself on them. So I'll get back to you on it. So far, most of them are super friendly, and things like the Book Arts Group, which meets monthly, are occasions that they get together. While we've been working on our property, honestly, I haven't really been doing the type of networking that I love doing and plan to be doing, which will enable us to have, you know, the structure of our residency is pretty flexible, is the way that I would put it. Similar to how we ran transit, my goal is to not really try to force artists to do things that they have no interest in doing, but we love the opportunity to get to show your work to people in this community. So figuring out a way to balance those things. You know, we are looking at having a flexible structure that could enable people who have funding issues, which I know will be a particular issue this year, to find ways to still be able to come. So instead of paying the full 2-week amount, they'd either teach a workshop or do a collaborative project with me that we could sell on an online store that will then fund the residency further, those kinds of things. So we're trying to come up with slightly, since it's our business, we kind of get to choose how we want to make it work. And as long as things aren't getting damaged, it'll be, yeah, bring your own clay body, Tom, exactly. Just not in my kiln, but otherwise. So I see there's a lot of chat and I've missed all of it. I am so sorry, guys. I'll look at that later. If there's something that I missed that you had a question about, maybe let me know again and then I'll notice it.
Meredith?
Yes.
What is the ideal setup for the pottery area?
The ideal setup to me would be in the summertime, the potter's wheel will be on our western portal, which is a kind of nice overhang that gets a really nice breeze. So you'd be in the shade, but in the fresh air. In the winter, it'll come into the shop and make a nice mess there, whatever, it's a clay shop. We plan to have a utility sink, a single potter's wheel, a couple of very large tables, so that if we were doing, say, a bookbinding workshop, the people could actually be in that physical space and then come into the print shop to use the equipment as needed. But it allows for a little more spreading out, which I think is important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the print shop's the one that has the running water. The print studio does not, the clay studio does. So that'll be exciting. We'll see.
Yeah.
Jim, are you a potter now too?
What's that?
Jim, it's becoming a trend, Rachel. Sorry, Jim. Rachel asked if you're becoming a potter.
Well, I used to, but it would be very nice to do it again.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there, like Richard Zide does pottery, Marty Sears does pottery, Natalie from Etc. Letterpress here is a potter and sculptor. I'm kind of surprised, but it happens more and more that I find artists who have that crossover. And I should explain, for those who don't know, my undergraduate degree was in ceramics, and so I managed
Mayor, I think your sound disappeared.
Yeah, Meredith, we can't hear you. Mm-mm-mm-mm.
Oh,
Let's see.
we can't hear you.
She muted. Can you unmute herself?
She's always been muted on her video. It was her phone. I'll unmute her video. Meredith, we lost your. Yep.
Can you guys hear me okay?
I
Now we can.
unmuted your video.
Lost the whole
And-
thing?
Nope. If I unmuted your video, so if you want to talk, it's not too echoey.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
I can't.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Ron and I both got disconnected at the same moment on our phone. Sorry about that. Bye, LZ, thanks. Sorry, so I don't know when you guys stopped hearing me. I just kept on going because that's me.
You had mentioned that you were done your undergrad.
Okay, so my undergrad was in ceramics, and then I managed a clay retail space in the Bay Area for a few years before I ever got to Chicago to do book arts. My work started out as books that were made of clay and mixed media. And so that was kind of the progression of things for me. And I have not had a regular studio practice in probably 8 or 9 years. You know, I still get to do amazing workshops and stuff like that, but I haven't had a full-time studio practice since grad school ended and I started transit. And so this has been pretty significant. There are boxes that we're going to unpack that I haven't seen the insides of for 20 years, since before I moved to Chicago, which was 2002. So the wood kiln that I know about is up near Taos, so you got to drive a little. I'm not willing to build an onigama here because that's a multi-chamber wood kiln because of the fire risks, frankly. I considered having a gas kiln. I really like salt and soda firing, and I've built those kinds of kilns before, but the risk in a residential neighborhood is just more than I want to deal with. So for the time being, the plan is to limit it to an electric kiln and then network with people. What my specialty was when I was in ceramics was glaze calculation and technology. So I'm the nerdy person who reformulates glazes when they change. And my goal is to kind of offer that service to local artists in exchange for some kiln space or something like that. And I've already gotten a little bit of interest on it. So it's just furthering that once my shop is back up and going, it'll be a little easier. Anything else?
Meredith, is the 2300 degree kiln you're bringing in, is that existing or something new for you?
It's kind of both. I had an electric kiln, a Scott 1227, that was what's called a kiln sitter model. It's the old traditional model. And right before I left Chicago, I gave it away to an artist who was willing to rewire it because I didn't want to deal with it anymore. And I am going to buy a smaller kiln because then I can fire it more regularly. The 1227 is the largest so-called hobby model of this kiln, but it's larger than a washing machine or dryer. And so I have literally fallen into it head first, trying to get to the bottom on occasions. So I wanted one that was a little less harmful to my back and would allow me to fire it. They also have developed electronic kilns, which are much fancier to fire. It allows you to do things like crystalline glazes, and I could get very nerdy talking about that with you guys, but yeah, so that'll be different but interesting. So I've never personally fired a Kilnmaster kiln. I have been told it's kind of as complicated as a microwave, so I'm not really worried about it. But it'll be different and interesting, and I'm looking forward to it. When we first moved here, there was this place called Santa Fe Clay that I had heard about for years and years. My former professors would come and do summer workshops at, that kind of thing. But about the end of that first summer, that building or property was sold. And I don't know much about that person who bought it. I don't know anything about that person who bought it, but they chose to relocate it from kind of the busy farmers market area that it was in to a part of town I don't know. And many of the people were disappointed that, you know, staffs change, priorities change, and many of those people were frustrated that the institution that was much loved by them disappeared. So I have met a number of people who wish there was another place like that. So far, I have no desire to tackle that kind of a thing. We'll just stick to this space and an artist or two at a time. You know, with workshops, we could do hand building workshops for multiple artists at once. But, and I could certainly do printmaking techniques and clay workshops, which are kind of skill building, so you don't end up with a beautiful finished piece, but you have test tiles that you can use for future work that can refer to it. So yeah, I don't know.
Meredith, this is Brad. Can you talk a little bit about like the cost involved, or if there's any sort of supplementing of the cost with like local nonprofits or anything like that? And I apologize, and you don't have to answer if you already did.
I only answered really briefly. I don't mind repeating it. So we certainly will have a rate. My desire is, we are using the time right now where builders are on site using the electrical and water and stuff to kind of approximate what utilities will cost us while we're here. You know, it's hard to see. If I'm not firing a kiln, I can't tell how much electrical I'm using until I start doing that. So some of these are ambiguous until we're actually on site using the facilities. But the goal is there will be a fee that is for a 2-week residency. There will be grants available to lower the cost for artists who cannot afford that. And we are looking into doing things like limiting the cost a bit by enabling things like collaborative projects or workshops in order to defray some of the costs. So, you know, our attitude is this has no intention for me of being a money-making operation, but it does need to cover its own expenses. And so it'll be as cheap as we can manage to make it and still be able to offer what we want, you know. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure yet of what it is. We were told that the casita, when it got rented out by the prior owner, went for $1,500 a month or something like that. And our intention is not to like say, okay, half of that is exactly what it is, but to look at what the costs are. Our goal is also to like host a dinner for the person who comes to be an artist in residence. And we're trying to figure out whether it makes more sense. I'm sure many of you know of Macy Chadwick, who runs In Cahoots Press in Petaluma, California. She's awesome. If you don't know her, find out about her. But Macy and I met through the Alliance of Artist Communities, which is the umbrella organization for residency programs, mainly in the US. And she has a residency outside of San Francisco that has 3 studios and a print shop that has etching presses and a Vandercook, maybe 2 Vandercooks, I'm not sure. It's amazing and beautiful. And she has some really great structures to how she's organizing her organization. It's not a nonprofit. I was tempted to call it a nonprofit. So she and I have been speaking about how she works that. She's very fond of exhibiting the artist's work right after, like while they're still there, which would be my preference. I'm just realistic that a 2-week residency might not produce that much, and it might necessitate more work. So, bye, Lori. We have the desire to exhibit the artist's works who come here, but we're flexible about how we do that. So I suspect that our first year or 2 will be testing different things and really relying on feedback from the artists so that we can kind of focus in on what works best for everyone. So there'll be hopefully not bumpiness, but there will be some flexibility that may eventually become slightly more formatted over time, so that once we know what works really well for the artists, you know, we don't have a desire to leave them utterly by themselves and lonely, but we also don't want to be in their face constantly and want to give them time to do whatever they choose. In Santa Fe, there are about 150 hiking trails in the city alone. There are places like the Galisteo Basin and Tent Rocks and just amazing nature. If you like hiking or fishing or swimming, we have a couple of kayaks, you know, stuff like that. It's very conducive. Ron and I really like eating out at restaurants, which we're not doing right now, but I have been surprised by just how wonderful the restaurants in Santa Fe have been. They're James Beard Award winners. There's lovely little holes in the wall. It's a nice assortment for a town with, 100,000 people. I think as of last year, it was only 80,000 people, and then they included an unincorporated part of the county as part of the city.
I've been loving watching everyone in the side talk about what they love out there or what they love to visit out there, which is really beautiful. I haven't been out there yet, so you'll have to be my first stop when I come out.
You got it.
Yes.
We would love to do that. Well, yeah, I'm seeing, so the Santa Fe Opera is amazing. I will admit that I am not really a huge opera fan, but my husband is. And, you know, part of why I should explain that part of why we ended up here is because my grandmother lived here for over 20 years. And when she passed, it was just my mom and I to kind of close up their house. So Ron and I would offer to come out because it's beautiful here and why not? And the longer we stayed here, the more we loved it. You know, we ended up making friends, and it's just got a peacefulness that I've never lived around before. And, you know, I have only lived in cities. So it is a very significant change for me. Even though it's New Mexico's capital, it's still a small town, very much. And I've gotten to really like that about here, actually.
Mare, is this your mom that's like trolling you in the comments right now?
Who's trolling me? No, Carol is my aunt. Carol, would you wave to everyone? My aunt is a graphic designer in Manhattan.
I love it.
Director, talented individual. Yeah. I'll have to look at all your notes, Carol. That's right. Carol lived here in the 70s, so she was the first person to turn me on to Santa Fe. I have some pretty great stories that I probably shouldn't share about the days she lived here. And I have had a great time finding out from her friends what her life was like here. One of the local DJs knows who she was, etc. So it's been a lot of fun in those respects. And poet, you're right. So what else can I tell you guys about Santa Fe? I hadn't known that the opera has been around since the 1950s. Its kind of most significant thing is that it's an open air auditorium. And my grandparents convinced me to go see Madame Butterfly with them. And at the peak scene where she's, you know, about to kill herself, the sun is setting behind the stage perfectly. So they just have this magic to their productions that is really unique. Yeah, Jim is ready. So Jim Sheridan knows Tom Leach. The first time I got to visit the Palace of Governors print shop, Tom was working and I walked into the shop and I saw a print that had Hatch on the bottom that had been printed in this shop. And so I asked who had printed it. I didn't know if it was Brad or Bethany, the era of Cellini, Jim, and it had turned out to be Jim, and Jim confirmed that he is friends with Tom. So I like that kind of network. Yes, I'm giving it away, Richard.
Yeah, spoiler alert much.
Spoiler, yeah, sorry guys, in case you didn't know opera.
Also, Mer, real quick, this is not related to anything important, but did you get your cool glasses styling from your aunt as well? She had some wonderful ones.
You have no idea. She has a collection. And yes, Carol was my inspiration for wild glasses, no question.
I love that we finally found that out.
Yeah. So what was I going to tell you guys? I can, you know, it's interesting. So I was doing some research trying to find print shops that I have not yet already met. I've gone to a few pop-up print exhibitions that have been in town. Most of them, Mary, I saw in the thread somewhere you were talking about, I'm forgetting her name, but the gal from Santa Fe Art Institute. And she and I connected when I was at the last Alliance conference.
That's Tony Gentili. She's my friend. She relocated from the Bay Area.
Right. That's
great artist. And she's in, actually lives in Albuquerque.
Right, exactly, with her partner. And yeah. She and I were finally introduced by Macy Chadwick at the last conference because I'd been tracking her since before I lived here. I knew her predecessor through the Alliance, but not since. And that is also something that you guys might want to consider. The Santa Fe Art Institute is on what was the campus of the College of Art and Design for Santa Fe, which was closed 2 or 3 years ago. And they are still figuring out in the city how to repurpose that land. During COVID-19, the former dorms are being used for homeless people who have COVID, who are able to stay there, stuff like that. But on that property is the Art Institute, Santa Fe Art Institute, and it is just a gorgeous building. It is amazing. I did an artist retreat there in January of 2017 that was really our most direct inspiration to relocate here. There were 9 of us, including the facilitator, half of whom were writers, half of us were visual artists, and half of the people lived in Santa Fe and the rest of us didn't. And it was really an amazing, I was the youngest person in that group. I think the eldest was like 74, but all different, you know, a photographer, a woman who is based in New York that paints ketubot and chuppahs, which are Jewish wedding related items, and bronze sculptor, myself, an art historian, a poet, a novelist, and then the mediator herself. So it was an amazing group of people. And that space has dormitories for 12 and huge studio spaces. And the way they run their residencies, I can't remember if they're 1 or 3 months long, and then they have a theme. So every time they do a call for entries, there's a different theme. But very exciting stuff that they've got going on. Thank you, Mary. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you to everybody who's been sharing spaces and websites in the comments. That has been a really nice thing in the chat to be able to easily go see what's happening.
I think what's interesting, Meredith, is, you know, it doesn't need to be competitive. You know, in a lot of bigger cities, everything can be very competitive, even in small places, right? If you can have alliances with these other organizations. And I also posted Bullseye Glass because I know that they have these resource centers. Right now they're in COVID, you know, shut down. They can't produce. They're in the same boat. I manage a glass studio, in case anyone doesn't know that, in Berkeley, California. And so, you know, we know all the Bullseye people, and they do printing on glass. It's a really wonderful, you can silk screen on glass. It's a great technique, you know, but you don't have to get involved in doing glass kiln firing in your space. But if someone's doing glass kiln firing at the resource center in Santa Fe at Bullseye, you know, and they want to do clay, they come to you, and, you know, so you form those alliances, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that was the point of transit, definitely, was finding those networks so that you could plug artists in. And to me, you know, it's wonderful that Santa Fe is such a large art city, but there are so many organizations and knowledgeable, skilled people in this area. To me, that's part of why artists should, or writers or musicians, be interested in coming here, is the history. I mean, I did just a quick search on Santa Fe writers and the history of like D.H. Lawrence, Cormac McCarthy, Douglas Adams, our current most famous, George R.R. Martin, all had or do live here at certain times, you know. So there's more writing stuff going on than I realized. There's a lot of, I know Laura Tom with Priscilla in Truth or Consequences, and she does fine bindings, stuff like that. So there's definitely a lot here to tap into.
Great. On that, I will thank you, Meredith. That was amazing. And I love seeing your space. I just want to come out. I think we're all going to come out and just camp on your yard, even if it's not ready.
I love it. Well, you know, the thing is even when the studio has guests in it, we have guest rooms in our house too. So if you guys are friends of ours, then you could still be here even if somebody was occupying the casita. So I'm looking forward to that. I think it'll be really fun to bring people out this way. One thing before we're done that I wanted to mention, that's something that we've begun talking about in Hamilton's Ways Goose. We are interested in trying to create a thing that we have flippantly either called the Silver Trail or the Turquoise Trail, depending, which is, you know, so many letterpress artists teach workshops. And I know that in Santa Fe, there is a phenomenally large body of retired artists who have disposable incomes and a lot of time and are interested in taking workshops. And so it seems kind of like a natural meshing to find a way that we can connect different workshops to each other, so that, I'm going to use an example. Say if Brad was going to come and do some workshops here, he could drive no more than 8 hours to his next workshop. And I think that if we could kind of work together to create this path, then at least artists who choose to teach workshops will have the ability to go, okay, well, if I'm going there, then I need to call Marfa Community Print, and I need to call Cindy Iverson in Arizona, and I need to call the International Print Museum in LA, and I'll make this, you know, every 2-day trip. So I'd really love, I know, was it Firecracker Press who made the map that had existed? So, you know, that was the first thing I saw that kind of gave me that idea. But the more I talk at different ways gooses to artists, the more it sounds like that make it a little easier for those artists who teach workshops and travel to be able to do, you know, 4 consecutive workshops over a period of time. So we're hoping that as we start developing, we're able to do that. Kyle in Silver City was interested, you know, just make it more possible to connect each other so that it's a little less singular.
Yeah, when you had said that it was kind of like musicians having 4 places to go instead of 1, that's what really connected. I was like, yes, that's exactly, because when we get people to Hamilton, there's nowhere else in Two Rivers for them to do a workshop, but they could go to Green Bay or Chicago or Milwaukee.
Right,
so.
Exactly. Well, that Chicago, Green Bay, Hamilton connection to me was really what made it seem like it would make sense to do it other places. I mean, anytime all of us get together and we compare notes, you hear of places that are surprisingly near each other, right? So it'd be so much better for any visitor to be able to kind of piggyback. I know Rick Griffith had been talking about Daffy Kuntz and his need, you know, if he comes out needing more than just 1 workshop to make it financially viable for him to come out all this way.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really lovely idea. Keep us updated on it, because I think that's good.
Yeah, awesome.
I will also tell you a couple things we're doing at Hamilton. That way you get that update. Our next Ham Hang is going to be May 6th at 1 p.m. And let's see, May 6th is Wednesday. So it's going to be next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Central Time. And it's going to be with P22 Studio. So P22 is our digital type partner when we do the Hamilton Legacy fonts. We're working with P22. So it'll be Rich Kegler and James Grieshaber. And I thought James was on this call, but maybe he's had to leave. He was here earlier. So anyway, that one is going to be a really good chat as well. It'll be good because they're letterpress printers as well as digital type makers. So it's going to be a nice balance. And then also,
time again, Steph?
Yeah, it's going to be 1 p.m. on May 6th. Central Time. I know we are now international. Yeah, Amanda?
I don't know. I know a lot of people here are friends with Dear Bethany. Her MFA show is at noon on the 6th.
Yes.
Coast time. So I know that, I think she had a link. You can DM her through Instagram and get the link to attend if anyone wants to attend her MFA show.
And that is Bethany Ron.
Yeah.
If you get the lowly ginger printer.
Yeah.
So we can share her her link as well. I've already signed up. In fact, I thought it was today. So I was like rushing around to make sure I could get to it. And then I logged on and found out it was not today.
Isn't that fun?
I know. So
I'm learning is where you that don't know, she's been putting images on Instagram because she's not able to exist, and it's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, her hair in tiny ball. Like, I love her letterpress work, but then when she showed some of the very personal work that was 3D, I was pretty blown away.
Yeah.
Oh, and a brand new thing we're doing is called Ask a Master Printer. So we have Jim Moran, Master Printer, and if you have questions that you need answered, especially if you're right now and Google's not making it happen, you can email us. I'll put, it's just going to be info@woodtype.org. Maybe it's not a printing question. Maybe you just want to ask Jim a question. That's fine. Jim is our master printer, so he's going to be answering them all. So I'll be, we're going to work on the dates. We don't have a date yet. We wanted to get some questions together, but it'll be in the next 2 weeks, and I'll be going in and we'll be going live. We're thinking right now it's going to be live on Instagram. Yesterday, I asked a bunch of college students if they preferred YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook Live. They all naturally answered Instagram. If you guys want to let us know where you like to watch your live videos, let me know, because there's way too many options and we're just one tiny staff. So anyway, if you, I'll put it over there now, info@woodtype.org. Send in your questions for Jim Moran, Hamilton's master printer, and he'll be happy to answer those. We'll keep those short and sweet, maybe 15 minutes. Depends on how many questions we get. So, Okay, I want to say thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Meredith. I loved the tour. Can't wait to visit you.
Thank you.
Always nice to see your face.
Thank you, guys. I'm glad I got to tour. Limited technical difficulties.
It was smooth as butter and I loved it.